And now, it's The Law Show on CL 650. A comprehensive look at everything you need to know about the law.
Today on The Law Show, we're focusing on immigration law, and joining us in studio is Rudy Kisher and Alex Stojkovic, partners at Maynard Kisher Stojkovic, Immigration and Citizenship Lawyers. I was going to ask you, what is MKS law? And I guess the intro kind of explains it. I got to tell you guys, of all the law shows I do, I look forward to having you two in because it's always very exciting and passionate, and you guys are so knowledgeable about what you do, but it's always fun. I think it's a very interesting subject because it really impacts people, and we see our ever-changing country and city that's built on immigration, and you guys are on the front lines of it. So tell us about MKS. Where are you, and who uses your services for the most part?
Well, we're a boutique immigration law firm. And we're based in Yaletown. So we specialize in, as our names say, in immigration law. And so we help a variety of people interested in coming to Canada, or we help employers wanting to bring foreign talent to Canada, or bring executives in terms of global mobility, helping people come to Canada on work permits. We also,
Go ahead. I was just going to say, Alex, when you're finished, what I find interesting about when you guys come in is the sands are ever shifting. Like, you never seem to have the system isn't nailed down. It seems to always be changing, right?
Yeah, all the time. I mean, annually, it's not unusual that you have 8 to 10 significant changes a year, particularly in the last 5 or 6 years. And now that we've had a change in government, it seems like this year will be even more accelerated in terms of changes than other years.
I mean, besides tax and criminal law, I think we're the third most frequently changing area of law, right? I mean, it's very much a political animal. It's up what the government wants to let in that day, and that, they're responsive to that, and therefore we have to be responsive and keep up to date on it.
So who do you represent more? Businesses sucking people into the country, or people trying to get into the country?
Well, usually they're both the same, right? Usually the businesses are bringing people in, so we're representing the business, but we also end up representing the employees that are coming to work, or the business people that are actually investing in Canada, coming to Canada. And we also have a personal services side of people that run into problems with immigration here, or phone up and say, listen, how can I get to Canada? And they don't have an employer already. And
do you get individuals, or is it mostly a business relationship?
It's a mix. I mean, we do get a lot of individuals. Our personal services side is actually quite a large segment of our practice, and that divides into both application side as well as litigation side. So we do have a large mix. I would say it's probably roughly half corporate and the other half is personal services.
Now, recently there was the Canadian Bar Association National Conference held here in Vancouver, which is unusual to start with, and the fact that you had very good turnout, right? So what was the tone, and how was this Bar Association meeting?
Well, the key point for your listeners is, apart from the fact that there were 500 people, which in and of itself is not unusual for any conference, it is for our national conference, was the attendance of the minister. And not only did the minister attend, John McCallum, the Minister of Immigration, but he made significant announcements during the course of his presentation to us. Unlike previous ministers, he was greeted very warmly by an audience which was mostly, lawyers that practice in our area, as well as other practitioners in immigration, and academics and government folk, both provincial and federal level. And he stayed for questions and answered in a remarkably forthright way, something we're not used to from the previous last few ministers, not all of whom would not speak to us, but certainly saw us as a stakeholder group, saw lawyers as an interested stakeholder group, did not take into the account at all that we were concerned with the administration of justice generally, and was certainly not interested in our views on many of the bills that they put forward.
Yeah, I mean, the minister said as much. He came out and said, thank you very much, for your submissions. We appreciate them. We look to you as partners, and we value what you have to say. Whereas the past minister went so far as to say, you guys are immigration lawyers, and you're just out here to make money, and you're arguing with us because it's cutting into your bottom line. Which to our response is, anytime you make a change, people need more lawyers, and so you're just adding business for us. It's really, it's not reflective, but that was the view that they were coming with, which, this was a total breath of fresh air for the entire audience.
So, yeah. So let's take the counterpoint to that. When you say, okay, you guys are in business to, run your practice, and you have to stick handle whatever's going on. If they streamlined it a bit, would it be better for you or worse for you guys?
Well, to be fair, I mean, part of the issue is that as an organization, the Canadian Bar Association is always advocating for streamlining, regardless of the fact that it's not in our interest, particularly as lawyers, that in terms of practitioners, that it be streamlined. And many of the points of advocacy over the last decade didn't even have anything to do with whether it would create work or not. For example, the previous government eliminated medical funding for refugees on a national level. That was something that we in the bar were pretty passionate about and intervened in the court action that ultimately overturned the ban. There was certainly no pecuniary interest in the bar in whether refugees got health care coverage or not. It was just the right thing to do, that refugee claimants should at least have basic health care coverage funded according to Canada's international treaties. So that's an example of where we had no interest financially one way or the other as an organization, but part of our mandate is the proper administration of justice. And when there's injustice being done, the Canadian Bar Association and other stakeholder groups such as CARL and which is the Canadian Association of Refugee Lawyers, part of their mandate is to step up in those situations.
I've talked to you guys in the past about this. There was a time when the law was kind of stagnant and it stayed the same, and you kind of knew what you were dealing with, but it's changed a lot. Like there seems to be things come out regularly from the government where they make changes to this. Do you think we're going to get back to a point where we're going to have a pretty stable immigration law?
I don't think so. I mean, what happened is under the past government, they brought in changes in which the new legislation, they redid the entire legislation, and they made it very much not subject to the regulations and to the Act, so which it has to be reviewed by Parliament for any changes. They made it subject to what's called minister's instructions.
So you just get an email on a Friday saying, by the way, Monday, this is the
exactly what it happens. That's what it feels like. I mean, the downside of that from us practitioners is things are changing very quickly, and you don't have a legal framework in which to argue things and to look at the rights and to go back and debate them before these changes happen. The upside, I think, though, is it allows the government to respond to what's economically happening. I mean, oil prices drop. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, they can focus on maybe bringing in different immigrants. Or, they end up with a backlog in family class. They can make that a priority and make those changes by ministerial instructions announcements, which happen quickly, right? So there is an upside to that, for sure.
The challenge for the government, and I agree with Rudy entirely, a lot of what has been going on is the previous government quite rightly noticed that there was no ability to react quickly to certain types of issues. Mm-hmm. And so this ministerial intervention kind of regime that was created, ministerial instructions, enabled that to happen. The problem with that, of course, is that you lose the benefit of public debate, particularly among stakeholders and other interested parties, either in Parliament or at the regulatory phase if you're not doing legislation but just regulation. There's a pre-publishment phase, there's a period before regulations can get into the Canada Gazette where you can discuss them.
And opposition can bring up points?
Absolutely, and that was eliminated by two things. One, ministerial instructions, and second, by the enormously prevalent omnibus bills in which everything was being changed
at once.
So we're changing 50 bills, and you can't debate all 50, and there's never going to be time to do it.
It's interesting that the opposition now is saying that the budget is an omnibus bill. There's so much stuff being stuffed into the federal budget, so it goes both ways. Both ways.
That being said, though, certainly omnibus bills were not an invention of the Conservative government of Canada. I mean, this is something that in the United States you've seen for many, many years. But the challenge, I think, for the federal Liberals is that there have been commitments made by many of the people who are sitting here now in cabinet over the past 9 years in opposition, where they've said on record that they're against ministerial instructions, where they do want to be transparent. And there has been at least an effort at this initial stage in our area, immigration, where the ministers tried to be very transparent about what they're going to change and what their priorities are.
Well, and you said there were announcements, like your bar association, your national conference, you had the minister, and he made some substantive announcements, right? Like you have some re-emphasis on students, processing times, family emphasis. So can you give us some examples of what was brought up?
So this year, in January, there were only 5,000 spots allocated to sponsoring parents and grandparents. Mm-hmm. Well, they increased that to 10. So that's already been done. That was in the plan for 2017. It was already done for January of 2016. So that's something concrete that they've done already. An announcement was made by the minister that he's looking very carefully at changing the way express entry allocates points to enable workers and students who are here already to have an easier time of it, to address the Chamber of Commerce report and the various other stakeholders groups who have complained that express entry is not responsive enough to the desire for permanent residence of students and workers who are already here.
So you're saying if you've helped educate somebody, wouldn't it be better to keep them here than to have them go back? Is that one of the ideas?
Well, part of it is that the original idea behind Canadian Experience Class and a number of other federally regulated categories of immigrant was to make it easier for those people, and things were progressing along those lines until express entry was rolled out in January of 2015. And what it's done is it's actually made it harder for certain students and workers to qualify. And this was one of the pieces in express entry that the Canadian Chamber of Commerce bitterly complained about.
Well, I mean, it's a problem of oversupply, right? I mean, we always have this problem in Canada that we only take 300. This year we're going to take 305,000 immigrants, right? There is an endless demand out there from people that would like to immigrate to Canada. We changed under the Conservatives. They changed the system where instead of picking people from overseas, we're going to pick them from within the country. We'll get these students, and we'll take these students. That's great. They've been trained here, so we don't have this issue of foreign training. Yeah. We give them a work permit afterwards. That way they get some Canadian skills, and then we immigrate them. The problem that we're seeing right now, though, is you've created that demand. People still have that demand. And so how's the marketplace responded? The marketplace responded by, we're going to set up these schools. Well, you can't get into UBC? We'll start a little language college here, and we'll train you. So we'll take $20,000 a year from you for 3 years. You'll pay $60,000. You've now been here for 3 years. Have you got a useful degree? Maybe not.
It's like whack-a-mole, right?
Yeah.
It's something, you hit one thing, it pops up somewhere else. People are entrepreneurial. That's pretty clever if you think about it.
But now the problem's here.
Yeah.
Right? So not the problem, but the person. So the person is here wanting to immigrate. He's got a degree that may not be the most useful degree, and he's got skills that doesn't plug him into the marketplace at a high-skilled job. So he's working at, let's say, Starbucks as a shift supervisor and wants to immigrate making $12 an hour. And now the Liberals are trying to respond to that and saying, well, listen, we're going to let these people in. You've got to wonder, my question is that the best answer for Canada? Which
brings us to the previous points. That's why you have these announcements that come out and they can change quickly without having to go to Parliament, which is a reactive system, right? We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to bring in the Quebec issue. Always interesting. We're talking about family law and immigration law, I should say, with our two guests today, Rudy Kisher and Alex Stoykovich. They're partners at MKS in downtown Vancouver. We'll return on The Law Show next on CL 650.
There's more of the show still ahead. This is The Law Show on CL 650.